The rain-slicked streets of the forgotten edge of town gleamed under the sodium glow of flickering streetlights, turning the world into a blurred watercolor of shadows and regret. It was just past midnight when the call came through to the emergency room at Mercy General Hospital, a routine dispatch for a single vehicle crash on the outskirts. The kind that barely raised an eyebrow in a place where broken lives washed up like debris after a storm. But Nurse Elena Ramirez, with her steady hands and eyes that had seen too many sunrises without sleep, felt the pull of something deeper that night. She was midway through her shift, the air thick with the antiseptic tang of bleach and the low hum of fluorescent lights, when the ambulance doors swung open, revealing a man sprawled on the gurney, his leather jacket torn and bloodied, the faint scent of engine oil and scorched rubber clinging to him like a ghost. Eleanor moved without hesitation, her white sneakers squeaking softly against the linoleum as she directed the paramedics. The man, Jacob Harlan, they later learned, was in his late 40s, broad-shouldered and weathered, with a jagged scar tracing his jawline like a map of old battles. His motorcycle lay twisted in pieces miles back on the highway, but he was alive, barely, his chest rising in shallow, ragged breaths. "Pressure's dropping," one of the medics barked, and Elena was there, starting an IV, her fingers deft and unyielding. Whispers of his identity filtered through the chaos. A biker, one of those Iron Oath riders from the dusty roads beyond the city limits, the kind folks cross the street to avoid. But to Elena, he was just a man in pain, his eyes flickering open for a split second, dark, haunted, locking onto hers with a gratitude that cut deeper than any wound. Word travels fast in the hollow corridors of a hospital, especially when it involves outsiders. By the time Jacob was stabilized in a curtained bay, the night shift director, Dr. Harlan Voss, no relation, thank God, had stormed in, his face a mask of pinched disapproval under the harsh overheads. Voss was a man built from boardroom battles, not bedside vigils, his tie crisp even at this hour, his voice carrying the clipped authority of someone who'd long ago traded empathy for efficiency. "Ramirez!" he snapped, pulling back the curtain just enough to glare at her. "What is this? We don't run a charity for road warriors here. That man's got no insurance, no ID beyond a wallet full of cash and a club patch. You're wasting resources on a transient who probably brought this on himself." Elena straightened, wiping her hands on her scrubs, the weight of the shift pressing on her shoulders like an invisible yoke. She'd lost her brother to a similar crash years ago, a promise whispered in his final hours to always help those the world discarded. "He's a patient, doctor," she replied evenly, her voice steady as the beeping monitors. "And right now he's fighting for his life." Voss's laugh was sharp, devoid of humor, echoing off the tiled walls like shattering glass. He leaned in closer, his cologne overpowering the medicinal haze. "Fighting? Look at him. Tattoos up to his neck, smells like a garage fire. You want to play Good Samaritan? Do it on your own time. Get him processed and out by morning, or maybe I'll make sure your next evaluation reflects this." Indiscretion. The words hung in the air, a veiled threat wrapped in policy, as he turned on his heel and vanished down the hall, leaving Elena to the quiet vigil. She glanced back at Jacob, now sedated and bandaged, his chest rising and falling in the dim light. In his delirium earlier, he'd murmured something about a promise, an old oath to brothers in leather and chrome, sworn under desert stars long ago. "Tell them. The ride's not over," he'd rasped, his hand gripping hers weakly before slipping into unconsciousness. As the hours ticked by, the hospital settled into its nocturnal rhythm. Distant coughs from the wards, the occasional page over the intercom, the patter of rain against the windows like impatient fingers. Elena charted his vitals, her mind wandering to the life she'd built in this place, a single mother to a teenage daughter, scraping by on shifts that blurred into one another, holding on to fragments of hope amid the despair. Jacob's chart revealed fragments of his story. A veteran, discharged with honors but haunted by ghosts from sands far away, now leading a crew of riders who patrolled the back roads, enforcing a code of their own against the shadows creeping into small-town America. Corruption in the local mills, families torn by greed, whispers of why he'd been run off the road that night. But Voss's warning lingered, a storm cloud over her resolve. Dawn crept in slowly, painting the sky in bruised purples and golds, the first birdsong piercing the quiet. Elena stepped out for a breath of air, the cool mist kissing her face as she lit a rare cigarette by the loading dock. That's when she heard it, a low rumble, building like thunder rolling in from the horizon. Headlights pierced the fog, dozens of them, slicing through the morning haze like beacons. Harleys mostly, their engines a symphony of growls and roars, tires crunching gravel as they formed a phalanx at the hospital gates. 50 strong, at least, clad in weathered denim and vests emblazoned with the Iron Oath emblem, a clenched fist around a broken chain. At their head rode Marcus Kane, Jacob's second-in-command, a towering figure with silver threading his beard, his face etched with the same quiet fury that defined their brotherhood. They didn't rev engines in aggression. This was a statement, a tide of loyalty crashing against indifference. Marcus dismounted, his boots heavy on the pavement, and approached the entrance where Elena stood frozen, the cigarette forgotten between her fingers. "Nurse Ramirez?" he said, his voice gravelly but respectful, extending a hand scarred from countless rides. "Jacob, he made it through the night because of you. We don't forget debts like that." Behind him, the riders stood sentinel, their presence a wall against the waking world, engines idling like watchful hearts. Voss emerged then, alerted by the commotion, his face paling as he took in the sea of chrome and determination. "What is this? Clear out before I call security!" he blustered, but his words dissolved in the face of their unyielding gaze. Elena felt a shift, like the first crack in a dam long held back. These weren't the monsters of urban legend. They were guardians, bound by promises forged in fire, answering a call that echoed from Jacob's bedside. As the sun crested, bathing the scene in golden light, Marcus turned to her. "He asked for you before we left the road. Said you'd understand the weight of what we carry." The air hummed with possibility, the scent of exhaust mingling with fresh earth, a reminder that in the grind of daily survival, honor could still roar to life. And in that moment, as the gates creaked open to let them through, Elena knew this was only the beginning. A ride toward reckoning where one act of kindness summoned a force that no director's scorn could silence. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the hospital parking lot, where the Iron Oath riders held their ground like ancient oaks rooted against a gale. Elena's heart pounded in sync with the idling engines, a rhythmic thunder that vibrated through the asphalt and up into her bones. She crushed the cigarette under her heel, the ember hissing out like a secret finally released. Marcus Kane's eyes, sharp as flint under the brim of his weathered cap, held hers without flinching, a gaze that spoke of roads travelled in silence, of losses etched into every line of his face. "Jacob's stable," she said, her voice cutting through the low growl of exhaust. "But he's not out of the woods. Fractured ribs, internal bruising. He'll need time." Marcus nodded, the silver in his beard catching the light like frost on iron. He was a man who'd stared down worse than a hospital bureaucracy, desert storms that swallowed patrols whole, nights when the line between ally and enemy blurred in the sand. "Time's what we give our own," he replied, his words measured, carrying the weight of oaths sworn under starlit skies. Behind him, the riders shifted subtly, a sea of leather and chrome, their vests bearing the emblem that had become legend in these parts, a fist breaking chains, symbol of freedom forged from forgotten promises. They weren't here for spectacle. This was family, answering the call of blood and brotherhood, the kind that didn't need papers or pedigrees. Doctor Voss pushed through the automatic doors, with the bluster of a man unused to opposition, his white coat flapping like a surrender flag he refused to raise. Security trailed him, two burly orderlies looking more uneasy than authoritative, their radios crackling with static. "This is private property," Voss barked, his voice pitching higher as he surveyed the convoy. "Disperse immediately, or I'll have the authorities here in minutes. We don't tolerate gangs loitering on hospital grounds." The word gangs hung in the air, laced with the disdain of someone who'd never felt the pull of loyalty beyond a paycheck. Elena saw the flicker in Marcus's jaw, a controlled storm, but he didn't rise to it. Instead, he stepped forward, his presence filling the space like the shadow of a mountain. "We're not loitering, Doctor," Marcus said evenly, his tone laced with the gravel of 1,000 miles. "We're here for Jacob Harlan, one of ours, and we're grateful to Nurse Ramirez for pulling him through." He glanced at Elena, a nod of respect that warmed her like sunlight after endless night. Voss's eyes narrowed, darting between them, calculating the optics of a standoff broadcast live to the morning shift. Whispers rippled from the windows above, nurses peering out, patients stirring in their beds, the hospital awakening to a drama that felt ripped from the pages of some old western, where outlaws weren't always the villains. Elena felt the eyes on her, the weight of judgment from colleagues who'd long ago numbed themselves to the human tide. But something, in Marcus's words, reignited the ember her brother had left her. The promise to stand for the overlooked, to mend what the world broke. "They're not causing trouble," she interjected, stepping beside Marcus, her scrubs a stark contrast to his road-worn gear. Jacob mentioned his crew before he passed out, said something about a ride that wasn't over. Voss's face twisted, a sneer pulling at his lips as he jabbed a finger toward her. "Ramirez, this is exactly the kind of favoritism I warned you about, associating with these elements. You'll be written up for this." The riders didn't flinch, but a murmur rose among them, engines revving in unison, a deep, resonant growl that shook the ground and silenced Voss mid-sentence. It wasn't a threat, it was a chorus, a reminder of the bond that no suit could sever. One rider, a woman with cropped hair and a tattoo of wings across her collarbone, Lila, Jacob's old riding partner from the war days, dismounted and approached Elena. Her handshake was firm, calloused from wrenches and throttles. "He spoke of you too," Lila said softly, her voice cutting through the tension like a cool breeze. "In his fever dreams on the road, said an angel in scrubs would know the cost of keeping promises." Eleanor's throat tightened, memories flooding back, her brother's hand in hers, his whisper of, "Help them, El, the ones who ride alone." As the standoff stretched, a patrol car pulled up to the curb, lights flashing but sirens silent, the officer stepping out with the wariness of someone who'd heard the tales. But Marcus raised a hand, placating, and the riders eased their throttles to a purr. "We're not here to fight," he told the cop, pulling a worn envelope from his vest, Jacob's directive, scrawled in hasty ink before the crash. "Just to ensure our brother gets what's due. No insurance. We'll cover it. Every stitch, every pill." The officer scanned the paper, then the group, and nodded, sensing the undercurrent of honor that ran deeper than any badge. Voss retreated inside, his threats dissolving into the ether, but Elena knew this was far from over. As the riders formed a loose perimeter around the entrance, sharing quiet words and thermoses of black coffee, she slipped back to Jacob's room. The monitors beeped steadily now, his color returning like dawn to a shadowed valley. He stirred as she adjusted his IV, his eyes cracking open, clearer, focused. "They came," he murmured, a faint smile cracking his lips. "The oath never breaks." Elena squeezed his hand, the scent of rain-washed earth drifting in from the open window, mingling with the sterile air. Outside, the engines hummed like a lullaby, a vow that redemption wasn't a solo ride. But whispers of the crash's cause lingered in Jacob's fragmented recount, a tale on the highway, shadows from the mill town's underbelly, corrupt overseers squeezing families dry, turning honest work to poison. Jacob's crew had been closing in, their code demanding justice without badges, honoring the forgotten. Elena glanced out the window, where Marcus coordinated with the riders, their silhouettes etched against the rising sun. This arrival wasn't just support, it was a declaration, pulling her into a web of loyalty that could upend the fragile balance of her world. As noon approached, the hospital buzzed with uneasy curiosity, and Elena felt the first stirrings of a purpose long dormant, a ride toward truths that no scorn could derail. The afternoon sun hung heavy over Mercy General, turning the parking lot into a shimmering haze of heat waves that danced off the chrome accents of the Iron Oath motorcycles. Elena wiped a bead of sweat from her brow as she pushed through the side door, the automatic whoosh lost in the persistent thrum of idling engines. Inside Jacob's room, the air was cooler, laced with the faint metallic tang of monitors and the earthy residue of his leather jacket, now draped over a chair like a sentinel's cloak. He lay propped up slightly, his broad frame sinking into the thin mattress, but his eyes, those dark, storm-tossed eyes, were alert now, scanning the room with the quiet intensity of a man piecing together fragments of a shattered night. "You look like you've seen ghosts," Elena said softly, checking the drip line with hands that trembled just a fraction. The confrontation outside still echoed in her ears, Voss's bluster fading against the unyielding wall of the riders. Jacob's gaze met hers, a flicker of recognition warming the lines of his face. "Not ghosts," he rasped, his voice rough as gravel under tires. "Brothers, Marcus. He rode through hell to get here." He shifted, wincing at the pull of bandages across his ribs, each breath a reminder of the highway's betrayal. Elena adjusted the pillow behind him, her touch gentle, born from years of mending what others broke. In the quiet, she could almost hear the rain from last night, a distant patter against the window pane, syncing with the rhythm of his pulse on the screen. Down the hall, the hospital's undercurrents stirred like eddies in a river. Nurses exchanged hushed glances over clipboards, their curiosity laced with caution. Stories of the Iron Oath weren't bedtime tales. They were warnings whispered in break rooms about men who lived by codes sharper than any scalpel. Elena had heard them too, fragments of Jacob's world filtering through his chart, a veteran who'd traded fatigues for leathers after the sands of distant wars left him with promises heavier than shrapnel. His crew patrolled the fringes, not for glory, but for the overlooked, the families crushed under the boot of the local mills, where overseers pocketed wages and silenced dissent with shadows in the night. That crash? No accident, Jacob had murmured earlier, his words slurring into urgency. A setup, tires slashed by unseen hands, payback for prying too close to the rot at the heart of Elmwood's economy. She pulled up a stool, the plastic creaking under her weight, and leaned in. "Tell me about the promise," she said, her voice a bridge across the sterile divide. Jacob's eyes drifted to the window, where the riders' silhouettes blurred against the horizon, engines purring like loyal hounds. "Swore it under the stars. Me and Marcus, after the last patrol went south. Brothers lost, oaths broken by suits who sent us in blind. We vowed, no more forgotten. Ride for the ones the world leaves bleeding." His hand, calloused and scarred, covered hers briefly, the warmth cutting through the chill of the AC. Elena felt it then, the echo of her own vow to her brother, whispered in a room much like this one. "Stand for the riders of the road, the wanderers without anchors. Voss's scorn had tried to drown it, but here it resurfaced, buoyed by the tide of leather-clad guardians outside. A knock shattered the moment. Sharp, insistent. Lila entered, her cropped hair damp from the heat, carrying a thermos that steamed with the rich aroma of black coffee, cutting the antiseptic haze. She was all edges and quiet strength, her vest patched with insignias from rides that spanned states, her eyes holding the same haunted depth as Jacob's. "Brought fuel," she said, pouring a cup for Elena with a nod that spoke volumes. "Marcus is handling the suits inside. They want to talk terms, bills, transfers, but we're not leaving without him." Jacob chuckled weakly, the sound like dry leaves in wind. "Stubborn as ever, Lil. Tell him the oath holds." Lila's gaze softened on Eleanor. "You get it, don't you? The weight. Jacob said you do. Lost someone to the same roads." Eleanor nodded, sipping the coffee, its bitterness grounding her amid the swirl of emotions. Outside, the standoff had evolved into a wary truce. Security posted at the edges, but the riders' presence a constant hum, deterring any hasty moves. Voss had retreated to his office, phone in hand, dialing contacts in the mill's upper echelons, men whose corruption Jacob's crew had been unraveling, one quiet intervention at a time. Whispers reached Elena through the grapevine, families evicted for speaking out, workers vanishing into accidents that smelled of cover-ups. Jacob's investigation had hit too close, drawing the shadows that forced his bike from the road. Now, with the oath assembled, those shadows would have to face the light. As the sun dipped toward late afternoon, casting elongated shadows across the lot, Marcus finally entered the room, his boots echoing like distant thunder. He was a colossus in the confined space, his silver-streaked beard framing a face etched with resolve. "Voss caved," he announced, voice low to avoid the hallway's ears. "They'll cover Jacob's care, no questions, but they're watching. Word spreading about why you went down the highway." Jacob's jaw tightened, pain and purpose mingling. "The mill's foreman, Victor Hale. He's the snake, squeezing the town dry, bribing badges to look away. We were en route to pull a family out, ones he marked for ruin." Marcus's eyes darkened, fists clenching at his sides. "Then we finish it, for the oath, for the promise." Elena stood, the coffee cup warm in her hands, feeling the pull of this unspoken alliance. Her shift was ending, but leaving felt impossible now, like abandoning a fire just kindled. "I know Hale," she admitted, the words tumbling out. "My daughter's school. Funds vanishing, teachers let go. Ties back to the mills." The room fell silent, the beeps of the monitor underscoring the gravity. Lila placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of chosen kinship. "You're in, if you want, nurse, not on a bike, but beside us. Honor like yours? It's rarer than clean roads." Twilight crept in, painting the sky in strokes of amber and indigo, the engines outside revving softly as riders rotated watch. Elena stepped to the window, watching them, a tapestry of weathered faces, stories woven in scars and shared glances. Jacob's words from the night before echoed, "The ride's not over." She turned back, resolve hardening like steel in a forge. Voss's mockery had been a spark. This brotherhood, a blaze, but as night fell, a new shadow loomed. A call on Marcus's phone, urgent, pulling from the mill town's edge. Hale's men moving faster now, targeting the family Jacob had vowed to save. The oath would ride again, and Elena, bound by her own ancient promise, knew she'd follow into the fray, where loyalty outran the darkness. The night air thickened, with the scent of cooling asphalt and distant pine, as the Iron Oath riders gathered in the hospital's shadowed lot, their motorcycles forming a ragged circle under the floodlights. Marcus Kane pocketed his phone, the urgent call from a scout still echoing in his ears. A family's home on the edge of Elmwood, marked for Hale's enforcers. The kind of quiet raid that left no traces but shattered lives. Jacob's eyes, from his bed inside, burned with that old fire, the monitor's green glow casting his face in ethereal light. "Go," he urged, voice strained but ironclad. "The promise doesn't wait." Elena stood at the window, her scrubs rumpled from the long day, heart caught between the sterile safety of the hospital and the pull of this makeshift family, their loyalty a force as tangible as the engine's low rumble. Marcus turned to her, his silhouette framed against the indigo sky, stars pricking through like distant promises. "You don't have to come, nurse, but if Hale's moving tonight, that family's got no one else. Jacob trusts you, says your word's as good as oath." Elena's mind raced, flashes of her daughter's face at home, safe but vulnerable in a town where corruption seeped like groundwater. Voss's earlier sneer replayed in her thoughts, his office light still on upstairs, a beacon of the institutional walls she'd always navigated alone. But this was the echo of her brother's dying breath. "Help the riders, mend the broken roads." She nodded, the decision settling like dust after a storm. "I'll guide you. I know the back ways, shortcuts through the old quarry that badgers don't patrol." Lila revved her bike softly, the engine's purr a nod of approval, her wings tattoo gleaming under the lot's harsh lamps. The riders mounted up in unison, a fluid motion honed from years of shadowed runs. 50 souls, men and women scarred by wars both foreign and domestic, their vests whispering against leather as they formed ranks. No whoops or hollers. This was precision, a convoy born of silent vows. Elena slipped into the lead truck Marcus had commandeered, an old pickup scarred with road rash, its cab smelling of oil and faint tobacco. As they rolled out, tires humming over gravel, the hospital shrank in the rear view, Voss's domain fading like a bad dream. The gates clanged shut behind them, but the echo of their departure lingered, a challenge to the indifference within. The road to Elmwood twisted like a vein through forgotten hills, moonlight silvering the guardrails and turning puddles into mirrors of the night. Elena directed from the passenger seat, her voice steady over the dashboard's glow. "Left at the oak split, avoids the main drag where Hale's watchers prowl." Marcus gripped the wheel, his knuckles white against the black, eyes scanning the dark for tails. The convoy stretched behind, taillights a red serpent winding through the bends, engines a muffled roar that blended with the wind's howl. Lila rode flank, her bike slicing the air, while others fanned out, scouts ahead to sniff out ambushes. Jacob's story unfolded in fragments as they drove, the mill's rot, Hale's grip tightening like a noose on workers who'd once been neighbors. Families evicted, kids pulled from schools, all to feed the overseer's greed, bribes to local law, silenced voices buried in paperwork. Tension coiled in the cab, thick as fog rolling off the hills. Elena's hands twisted in her lap, the weight of stepping beyond her white lines pressing down. "What if we get there too late?" she asked, the words slipping out like a confession. Marcus glanced her way, his profile carved by passing headlights. "Then we honor what we can. The oath isn't about winning every fight. It's about showing up when the world's turned its back." His words carried the timbre of deserts crossed, brothers lost to friendly fire and forgotten homecomings. Elena thought of her own scars, a brother gone too soon, his bike's wreckage a ghost in her garage, the promise she'd kept in quiet acts until now. This ride felt like reclaiming it, turning personal grief into collective shield. They crested a rise, Elmwood's lights smudging the horizon like a bruise, smokestacks belching faint steam, the mill's silhouette a hulking predator. The scouts' update crackled over the radio, enforcers circling the Ramirez home. No relation to Elena, just another family bearing the name's quiet burden. 2 black sedans idling at the curb, shadows moving like wolves. Marcus accelerated, the truck's engine growling in response, the convoy tightening formation. "Flank 'em!" he ordered into the comms, voice calm as a loaded chamber. Bikes peeled off, Lila leading a wing that arced through side streets, their approach masked by the night's chorus of crickets and rustling leaves. The scene unfolded like a taut frame. The modest house, porch light flickering, a mother's silhouette in the window clutching a child. Hale's men, 3 burly figures in unmarked jackets, pried at the door, tools glinting under the moon. No guns drawn yet. This was intimidation, the slow crush of authority's boot. The iron oath descended like a tide, engines flaring to life in a wall of sound that froze the enforcers mid-motion. Marcus skidded the truck to a halt, blocking the drive, while Lila and the others formed a perimeter, boots planting firm on cracked pavement. "Back off!" Marcus boomed, dismounting with deliberate slowness, his presence a dam against their retreat. The men whirled, hands hovering near pockets, faces paling at the sea of leathers and unyielding stares. Elena stayed in the cab at first, pulse thundering, but the mother's cry from inside pulled her out, raw, desperate, cutting through the standoff. One enforcer lunged for his radio, barking coordinates, but Lila was faster, wrenching it free with a twist that spoke of bar fights and battlefield scraps. "Tell Hale the oath's here," she said coolly, tossing it into the dirt. No fists flew, this was justice's edge. The power of numbers and moral weight, tipping the scales. The men backed toward their cars, eyes darting, the air electric with unspoken threats. Marcus approached the door, knocking gently. "We're with Jacob Harlan. You're safe now." The mother, Sarah, her name later shared over threshold coffee, opened a crack, tears carving tracks down her face, the child peeking from behind her skirt. Whispers of gratitude spilled out. Hale's demands for back rent that never reached the ledgers, threats to take the home her husband had built with calloused hands. Eleanor stepped forward then, her nurse's calm a balm. "Let me check him," she said, kneeling to the boy's side, finding only fear but no harm. The family exhaled, the house's warmth enveloping them like an embrace long denied. Outside, the enforcers peeled away, tires screeching into the night, but the oath held vigil, ensuring no return. As dawn's first light bled over the hills, painting the yard in soft golds, Marcus radioed back to the hospital. Jacob would hear of this victory, small but seismic, a family preserved, a promise upheld. Elena sat on the porch steps, coffee steaming in her hands. The engines idle, a soothing undercurrent. Voss's world felt distant now, his scorn a petty echo against this bond. But Hale's shadow loomed larger, his network fraying but venomous, plotting retaliation from mill offices aglow with false ledgers. The ride back would carry new stakes, pulling Elena deeper into the oath's fold, where redemption rode shotgun with risk, and loyalty's roar drowned out the cynic's jeer. If this tale of quiet courage is stirring something in you, smash that like button below. It helps these stories of honor reach more hearts in the shadows. The first rays of dawn sliced through the elmwood pines like golden blades, turning the Ramirez family's porch into a stage of fragile triumph. Eleanor sat on the weathered steps, the coffee mug warm against her palms, its steam curling into the crisp air, laced with the faint, acrid bite of exhaust from the idling bikes. Sarah hovered in the doorway, her son's small hand clutched in hers, the boy's eyes wide with a mix of awe and lingering fear as he watched the Iron Oath riders, shadowy figures in the half-light, checking perimeters with quiet efficiency. No one spoke of the enforcers' retreat, their sedans vanishing into the mist-shrouded roads, but the tension lingered like the dew on the grass, a promise of shadows regrouping. Marcus Kane paced the yard, his boots crunching gravel, phone pressed to his ear as he relayed the night's success back to the hospital scout. Jacob's voice crackled faintly over the line, weak but resolute. "I held the line? Good." Elena caught the exchange, her heart swelling with the simple weight of it. A vow kept, a family intact. Sarah stepped closer, offering a plate of day-old biscuits from her sparse kitchen, the scent of baked flour cutting through the morning chill. You "You're like angels on those machines," she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. Lila accepted one with a nod, her cropped hair tousled by the breeze, wings tattoo flexing as she bit into the crust. "Not angels," she replied softly. "Just riders who remember what it's like to have nothing left but your word." The convoy stirred to life as the sun crested fully, bathing the scene in a warm glow that chased the night's chill. Elena rose, stretching the kinks from her back, the pull of her shift long forgotten in the adrenaline's wake. Marcus ended the call, his silver-bearded face set in lines of quiet determination. "Jacob's pushing for discharge already. Says the real fight's here, in Elmwood's veins." He glanced at Elena, respect etching deeper into his gaze. "You steered us true last night, but Hale won't slink away. He's got ties, badges, councilmen. This save. It's a spark in his powder keg." Elena nodded, the quarry's dusty paths still vivid in her mind, the way the convoy had ghosted through them like spectres. Her own ties to the town pulled at her now, her daughter, waiting at home with breakfast uneaten, the schools starved by the same greed Hale funneled through false accounts. They mounted up in a ripple of leather and chrome, engines coughing to life with throaty growls that vibrated through the earth. Eleanor climbed into the pickup's cab once more, the dashboard's worn leather creaking under her grip on the door handle. The ride back unfolded in reverse poetry, twisting roads now gilded by daylight, the hills rolling like waves under a clear sky. Lila rode point, her bike cutting a clean line, while scouts fanned out to watch for tails. Conversation in the cab was sparse, Marcus's hands steady on the wheel as he shared fragments of the Oath's code, promises born in foxholes and back-alley oaths, a brotherhood that mended what wars and corruption tore asunder. "Jacob pulled me from the sand once," he said, eyes on the horizon. "Swore we'd never leave a man behind. Not then, not now." Mercy General loomed ahead by mid-morning, its white facade stark against the blue, the parking lot a ghost town compared to the dawn vigil. But as the convoy rumbled toward the gates, a new rumble answered, not engines, but sirens, sharp and insistent, cutting the air like accusations. 2 squad cars blocked the entrance, lights flashing in staccato bursts, officers stepping out with hands on holsters. Voss stood beside them, arms crossed over his crisp shirt, his face a thundercloud of vindication. The director's eyes locked on Elena as the truck halted, his sneer visible even through the windshield. "Told you, Ramirez," he called as she dismounted, his voice carrying over the dying engines. "Associating with outlaws. Now look, disrupting public order. These men are under arrest for trespassing, maybe worse." The riders dismounted in a wall of solidarity, no aggression in their stance, just the unyielding presence of chosen kin. Marcus stepped forward, hands open, the envelope of funds from earlier tucked visibly in his vest. "No disruption, Doctor. We cleared Jacob's bills, saved a family from harm. As the badges, they know Hale's game." The lead officer, a grizzled vet with a badge pinned like a reluctant medal, eyed the group warily, radio buzzing with dispatch chatter. Whispers of the night's events had already filtered through Elmwood's veins. Hale's men scattered, a mother's home secured. The cop's gaze shifted to Eleanor, recognition flickering. "Nurse Ramirez, you were out there." She met his eyes, her voice steady as the pulse she'd monitored all night. "Guiding good people to do right. Hale's the threat. Evictions, threats. Check the Ramirez place on Oak. You'll see." Voss sputtered, his authority cracking like dry earth. "This is insubordination. I'll have your license for dragging this circus here." But the words fell flat, drowned by the rider's quiet murmur. A tide of support that swelled without a wave. Lila leaned in to the officer, her voice low. "We ride for justice the law forgot. Jacob's inside, healing from a hit meant to silence him. Hale's behind it, mill ledgers cooked, families broken." The cop hesitated, the weight of small-town rot pressing on him. He'd seen the evictions, heard the silenced complaints. With a nod, he waved the convoy through, sirens falling silent as they parked in orderly rows, a chrome testament to loyalty's roar. Inside, Jacob's room hummed with renewed energy. The monitor's beeps a metronome to his stirring form. He grinned faintly as Elena entered with Marcus, the scent of fresh bandages mingling with the coffee Lila carried. "Heard the engines!" Jacob rasped, propping up on elbows that trembled but held. Oath delivered. Voss trailed in, flanked by security, but the fire in his eyes dimmed at the sight. Jacob surrounded, not alone. Elena charted his vitals, her hands sure, feeling the shift. Her world, once confined to these walls, now stretched to the roads beyond. "Hale's calling in favors," Marcus warned, pulling a chair close. "But we've got eyes on him now. Scouts report movement at the mill. Meetings hushed." As afternoon light slanted through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the floor, Eleanor stepped out to the hall, phone vibrating with a text from home. Her daughter safe, but school rumors swirling of budget cuts tied to Hale's grip. The oath's presence buzzed through the hospital like a current, nurses offering nods instead of stares, patients peering with curiosity. Voss retreated to his office, door slamming, but his isolation echoed louder than any threat. Back in the room, Jacob gripped Eleanor's arm, his touch a bridge of shared burdens. "You rode with us. That's the promise alive." She smiled, the weight lifting like fog, burned away. Yet outside, a lone rider peeled off toward Elmwood, scouting Hale's lair, where the foreman's silhouette paced under fluorescent hum, plotting a strike that would test every oath. Twilight deepened as the group planned in hushed tones, maps spread on Jacob's tray table, the air thick with the resolve of family forged in fire. Elena traced a route with her finger, her nurse's precision turning to navigator's instinct. Hale's retaliation brewed, a storm gathering over the mill's smokestacks, but the oath stood ready, engines primed for the ride that would shatter the chains of corruption. In that room, amid beeps and whispers, redemption wove tighter, pulling Elena into the heart of honor's unbreaking circle, where one mocked kindness became the spark for justice's dawn. The fluorescent hum of the mill's back office cut through the night like a dull blade, casting Victor Hale's face in pallid streaks as he paced the worn linoleum. Papers scattered across his desk, ledgers fudged with ink that hid stolen wages, eviction notices drafted in haste, whispered of a crumbling empire. Outside, the smokestacks loomed silent sentinels against the star-pricked sky, their iron frames groaning faintly in the wind, a reminder of the town's lifeblood turned poison. Hale's hands trembled as he gripped the phone, his voice a hiss into the receiver. "Get more men. The oath thinks they scared us off. Crush that family, burn the evidence if you have to." But doubt gnawed at him. The earlier retreat of his enforcers a crack in his armor, echoes of roaring engines haunting the quiet hours. Miles away, in Jacob's dimly lit room at Mercy General, the planning unfolded like a ritual under the watchful eyes of monitors. Twilight had surrendered to full night, the window framing a velvet darkness broken only by the distant glow of the parking lot, where Iron Oath riders kept vigil, their bikes lined like armored guardians. Elena leaned over the tray table, her finger tracing faded lines on the map, the paper crinkling softly under her touch. The scent of hospital coffee mingled with the faint, leathery aroma from Marcus's vest, grounding the tension in something tangible, human. Jacob sat propped higher now, color returning to his cheeks like dawn to a shadowed ridge, his bandaged ribs a badge of survival. "Hale's holed up," Marcus said, his gravelly voice low, eyes scanning the group's faces. Lila's steady gaze, Elena's quiet resolve, the scout's nods from the doorway. "But he's desperate, one push and his web unravels." Elena felt the pull of this circle, No longer an outsider, but woven into its threads, her brother's long-buried promise alive in the air between them. "The service entrance," she murmured, pointing to a sketched alley behind the mill. "It leads straight to his office, unmarked, away from the main gates. I volunteered there once during a flu outbreak. No cameras, just shadows." Her words carried the weight of her dual worlds colliding, the healer's precision meeting the rider's instinct. Lila sketched a quick route, her pencil scratching like whispers of wind over pavement. Jacob's hand found Elena's across the table, scarred knuckles brushing her skin. "You started this ride with one act," he said, his voice rough but warm. "Now we finish it together. For the families, for the oaths that bind us." The convoy assembled under the cover of midnight, engines stirring to life with muffled growls that blended into the night symphony, crickets chirping, leaves rustling in the breeze off the hills. 50 riders, a tide of leather and chrome, formed ranks in the hospital lot, headlights dimmed to slits like eyes in the dark. Elena rode in the lead truck again, the dashboard's glow illuminating Marcus's profile, his silver beard catching faint reflections. No sirens wailed in pursuit this time. The earlier standoff with Voss had shifted something in the hospital's corridors. Nurses murmuring support, even the grizzled officer from before tipping a nod as they passed the gates. Voss's office light burned late, a solitary flicker, but his threats had hollowed out, exposed by the day's truths. The road to the mill wound through Elmwood's sleeping veins, past modest homes with porch lights like beacons of fragile hope. Elena's thoughts drifted to her daughter, tucked safe at home. The school's funding woes a thread in Hale's tangled net. "He preyed on us all," she said softly, the truck's hum underscoring her words. Marcus nodded, hands steady on the wheel. Greed like his forgets the cost, until the oath reminds it. Scouts peeled off ahead, their bikes vanishing into side paths, relaying back via radio. Hale's lights on, 2 cars patrolling the perimeter, enforcers jittery inside. The air grew thicker with the scent of pine and industrial rust as they neared. The mill's silhouette rising like a beast from the earth. They approached from the shadows of the service alley, tires crunching softly over gravel that whispered underfoot. The riders dismounted in silence, a phalanx forming at the rear door, Lila at the flank, her wrench tucked in her belt like a talisman. Marcus led, boot testing the handle. It gave with a rusty creak, unlocking the path to Hale's lair. Inside, the corridors echoed with the drip of leaky pipes, the air heavy with oil and stale sweat. Footsteps ahead, Hale's men, alerted by some sixth sense, converged with muttered curses and shuffling boots. But the oath moved as one, a wall of unyielding presence, Marcus's voice booming first. "Stand down. Hale's reign ends tonight." No blows landed. The enforcers faltered at the sheer weight of numbers, hands raising in surrender as Lila and others secured the perimeter. Radios silenced, keys confiscated. Hale's office door burst open under Marcus's shoulder, the wood splintering like brittle bone. He stood there, frozen behind his desk, face draining to ash under the harsh desk lamp. Papers fluttered in the sudden draft. Ledgers spilling secrets, forged signatures, diverted funds, names of evicted families scrawled in margins. You're trespassing," Hale stammered, backing against the wall, his earlier bravado crumbling like dry clay. Elena stepped forward, her scrubs a stark white in the gloom, flanked by Jacob, discharged against protocol, leaning on Lila but standing tall, his presence a living testament to the crash's lie. "No more lies, Victor," she said, voice steady as a heartbeat. "The Ramirez family, the schools, the workers, you stole their futures. We've got the proof now, every page, every name." Hale's eyes darted, calculating escape, but the oath filled the room, their shadows merging into an unbreakable chain. Marcus placed the ledgers in a satchel, his movements deliberate. This goes to the right eyes, clean badges, not your bought ones. Evictions stop, funds return. Jacob met Hale's gaze, the scar on his jaw catching the light like a warning. You ran me off the road for this, for greed that breaks promises. Hale slumped, the fight leaching out, whispers of deals and confessions tumbling forth in the face of unyielding honor. No violence stained the air. Justice arrived on the wings of truth, the power of loyalty exposing the rot without a single fist raised. Dawn broke as they emerged, the mill stacks silhouetted against a sky streaked in rose and gold, the first bird song piercing the quiet. The convoy rolled back through Elmwood, enforcers in tow for the authorities, Hale's empire fracturing in their wake. At Mercy General, Voss waited in the lobby, his tie askew, face pale as the riders parked in orderly triumph. Whispers had reached him overnight, Hale's web unraveling, donations flowing back to the town. He approached Elena haltingly, words clipped. Ramirez, I misjudged. The board's reviewing your commendation. But her nod was distant. The real victory pulsed in the brotherhood around her. Jacob stood unassisted now, the hospital fading behind as the oath gathered one last time in the lot. Engines revved in farewell, a chorus of gratitude that vibrated through the earth. Eleanor hugged Lila, the scent of leather and resolve lingering. The ride continues, Marcus said, mounting his bike, eyes on the horizon, for all the forgotten. As they thundered away, chrome gleaming in the sunrise, Elena watched from the steps, her world remade, not by scorn or walls, but by promises kept, a family chosen in the roar of honor's dawn. Redemption wasn't a destination, it was the road they all rode together, engines echoing into eternity. If this journey of unbreakable oaths has touched your soul, thank you for riding along. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll keep sharing stories of quiet courage that light the way.